It's top 10 King time. Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Zach with Zacks Books, and today I've got for you my top 10 favorite Stephen King books. So, I had done this back in September, where I did like a bigger countdown. I think I started from like top 20, I think is what it was. And we did them in increments of 5, so it's going to be kind of hard to like link you to the other ones up here. So we're pretty much going to link all of them down below. Once I get to the top 5 here, then I'll probably do like a pew, and you'll see the video up there. But yes, since it was back in September, I have read some more Stephen King, obviously. And so my top 10 has changed. There is, I will say, a book in here that will probably shock a lot of you because of how hated it is by a lot of Stephen King fans. This is something that he wrote during his like big accident in early 2000s. And so a lot of you are going to be like, that book sucks. Why do you like it? I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can as to why I like it. But otherwise, not a whole lot has changed within the top like 5 itself. There is one that jumped in there, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So also don't forget to check out our podcast that is released every Monday. So I think this is going to go up after the one that just happened, so check that out. We'll have that down below. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for stuff like this, and without further ado, let's jump into the top 10. Alright, starting in at number 10 is the book that I said was probably going to cause some controversy between you guys, and that is Dreamcatcher. A lot of people hate this book. To me, it changes narrative. I will admit that when it kind of takes that jump from the 4 boys in the cabin to suddenly it's all this giant government situation, aliens get involved, and it gets a little weird. I personally don't care enough about that to hate it. I mean, the whole, the bondage between the 4 friends is really awesome. Beaver is probably one of my most favorite characters, even though another YouTuber or another BookTube person who I watched said that like that character, like he didn't like that character. And that's fine. Obviously there are, disagreements between Stephen King fans on what books they like and what they don't. I just thought Dreamcatcher was a good story. I didn't mind the alien stuff. I'm pretty sure I gave this 4.5 stars. Could have been a 5-star. I don't remember. Also, check out the Goodreads down below for all the star ratings for all these. But I want to say Dreamcatcher is probably an underrated book in itself. I just think it's a good story. I really enjoyed it. So, if you didn't know what this was about, it's about 4 friends. Beaver, Henry, Pete, and Jonesy, who go up to this cabin every now and again. And it's called The Hole in the Wall. And in this one trip they go, I think it's their 25th year they go, they have a 5th friend whose name is Duddits, and he's got this special ability. And he gives the 4 boys these special abilities. One of them could read minds, one of them can find things like way easier than anyone else. Just like telekinesis, not telekinesis, but like telepathic powers where they can communicate with each other and, do stuff like that. And so the one trip they go there, 2 of the friends go to get food, which I believe is Pete and Henry, and then Beaver and Jonesy stay behind at the cabin, and they encounter a weird stranger who's kind of got some weird stuff growing on him. They get very confused, and then an alien invasion pretty much ensues. Unfortunately, not all the friends make it. I'm not going to tell you who does and who does not, because that would be too spoilery. But very good book. I think it's underrated, and I know a lot of you are going to be wondering why this beats out a couple of other books. And there are just a couple of other flaws in those other books to where I just couldn't put it higher than this, because I just thoroughly enjoyed this book. So, there you have Dreamcatcher, number 10. Coming in at number 9 is The Stand, the complete and uncut edition. Bailey cameo. So, a lot of you know that this is Stephen King's biggest book, and this was a book that took a little while to read, and there was so much happening within the story that there are some parts that get a little confusing. Sometimes you lose track of who you're following. But at the end of the day, it was such a good story. It's about pretty much a pandemic that happens, where this flu breaks out and everyone dies. It's called Captain Trips. And everyone pretty much dies unless you're one of the few who is immune to it. And so we follow, initially the first guy's name is Stu, and he, gets imprisoned in this facility where they're testing them, wondering why the heck he's not getting sick. And then the outbreak happens within the facility, and everybody dies except for him. He also gets visions of Mother Abigail, this elderly black woman who lives in like the country, I think it is. And so he sees, apparitions of her in his dreams, and, she's like, come to me, and, we'll start something. And so eventually Stu and a bunch of other survivors find Mother Abigail, and they become like the good team. And then there's the other team, which is Randall Flagg, the man in black, not the man in black, the dark man. And he's like the evil character. So it's like Mother Abigail versus the dark man. It's like God versus the devil. And so a whole bunch of stuff ensues, obviously, because of how thick this dang book is. And you're following the story of the survivors on the good side and on the bad side. There's betrayal, there's romance, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in this book. It's just so good. I gave this 5 stars. It's a really solid book. There's a lot of big chunkers on my top 10 here. So, but The Stand is one. Now that I've like pondered on it for about a year now, I think I understand its importance and really how good of a story it actually is. It also kind of fits with what's going on now. COVID. Yay. So, there you have The Stand at number 9. Alright, coming in at number 8 is Stephen King's The Drawing of the Three, The Dark Tower 2. So, what makes me really enjoy this book is it introduces you to Roland's quartet. You get to meet Eddie Dean, Susanna, Jake Chambers was in the first book. I don't think he's in this one yet. I don't think he's in this one. I think he comes in Wastelands. Also, the bumbler Oi is not in this one. I think he also comes along in Wastelands. But Drawing of the Three is great because you get introduced to my favorite character in the entire series, Eddie Dean. He's the smart ass dude from New York, and he gets pulled in from one of the first door of the prisoner, and because on Roland's journey he has to draw 3 to help him on his journey to the Dark Tower. And the first one he pulls is Eddie Dean, and now it's the prisoner. And then the second door, I don't remember what the second door says, but then he pulls Susanna, Odetta Wilson. I think it's Odetta Wilson's her actual name. And then she goes by Susanna. She's got multiple personality disorder where she's got 2 people inside her. She's got a racist person inside of her and then a nicer woman. And eventually in the series, the nicer woman kind of takes over and becomes, Susanna Dean because they end up getting married. And so I just really like this because you get introduced to the characters that are going to help you on your journey through the rest of the story. It's a very solid book, and coming off of the first one is just kind of Roland and the man in black, and then you kind of go, through the first part of the story. He meets Jake Chambers. Jake is like, there's more worlds than these, and Roland kind of sacrifices Jake to continue on his journey, pretty much. And so then we get introduced to the second book where, like I said, he meets his quartet. He gets to meet Eddie Dean, Susanna, or Odetta Wilson. And there's supposed to be a third door, but the third door kind of collapses. You meet the guy who actually pushed Odetta Wilson into the train that handicapped her. She is actually crippled and like she's in a wheelchair. And so that's, I think, when you discover, I don't think that's when you discover the other personality, but you end up, like, he doesn't end up with, like, the third person he's supposed to until Jake arrives. Then it's Jake, Oi, Eddie, Susanna, and Roland. So then you get all the Quartet and Wastelands. But it's just a really solid story. I absolutely love it, and it's my favorite in the Dark Tower series. So maybe I'll do a Dark Tower ranking. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment down below if you think I should rank my Dark Tower books and which ones I like the most, which ones I like the least. So, but yes, the drawing of the 3, Dark Tower 2, is coming in at number 8. Alright, coming in at number 7, Desperation. So, this was a really chunky book. I mean, the story just kept me enthralled throughout the entire thing. So this is like a companion novel with The Regulators. It's not really like a sequel. The Regulators was actually written by Richard Bachman, and I actually really did not like that book. But the biggest reason is I did not read Desperation before I read that one. Desperation, Nevada, it's this like town that's like completely gone dead, and there's an evil spirit that's living there that goes by the name of Tack. And so what Tack is this evil entity that came from a mine that reopened. And so what happened was, like way back when, I want to say, I don't remember what the timing is, but these miners that are, it was like way back when, and so the Americans at the time were forcing, I don't think it was Chinese or Japanese, it might have been Korean or Vietnamese people to like mine, and what ends up happening is they stumble across this weird room, and this evil spirit comes out, and it's Tack, and Tack, embodies one person and like can control animals and stuff like that. And so, a lot of people died. And so everyone thought that it was gone. And then somehow it escaped again. And that introduces us to Intragan, which is the police officer who, obviously a police officer is supposed to uphold the law. I'm not going to go into more detail than that because obviously what's going on. And so he's seen as someone who is like supposed to be protecting people. But what he actually does is he actually killed the town. And what he does is he pulls people over and, takes them back into town, imprisons them, and Tack cannot survive inside of a human body for so long. What it does is it kind of like eats away at the human body and, tears it apart, essentially. And Intragan is this really big dude. What I mean by that is since he's built, kind of bigger and stronger, he can, Tack can use his body for a little bit longer because it's bigger. And so at some point in the story, it jumps to another body. It jumps into a woman, this little kid's mom, who the little kid actually ends up being like this. I don't want to say he's got the shine like Danny Torrance does. He's just like a religious kid, and so he just sees other stuff and helps everyone get out. It's a really good story. I really enjoyed it. It took a little while. The actual hardcover is like 700 something pages, but it's overall a very solid story. I really enjoyed it. If you don't mind some stuff dragging a little bit, the middle kind of does, but overall, very solid story. So there you have Desperation at number 7. Alright, coming in at number 6 is one that used to actually be in my top 5, but then another book happened, and that is Christine. So this is a book about a killer 58 Plymouth Fury. I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It is the story of Arnie Cunningham, who is this nerd. He gets picked on a lot, and he stumbles across this car while he's driving with his friend Dennis. And their friendship goes back all the way to childhood. And the book does more justice to their friendship than the movie actually does. So they become really good friends. Their bondage of friendship is like really strong. And one day Arnie stumbles across a 58 Plymouth Fury that's like really beat up. I think it's the 70s is where this takes place, 70s or 80s. It's told in first person, then I think third, and then it goes back to first person. You kind of get it from Dennis's perspective. And what ends up happening is the car ends up kind of like having a mind of its own. It's like alive, and Dennis can sense it right away, because when they go to get the car, Dennis goes in there and like the car's like telling him to do stuff, and he's like, no. And so what ends up happening is Arnie becomes, pretty much falls in love with this car, as opposed to his girlfriend, which I always forget her name, and I don't know what. Lee. Arnie like falls in love with Christine more than he does Lee, and Lee is like actually his girlfriend. So that breaks them apart. Dennis and her end up becoming a thing, and it's a really cool story. It's sad. My dream car is a 1958 Plymouth Fury because the dang thing looks absolutely sexy. It looks beautiful, and I want a car like that. Obviously, they don't make them, and to find one, I'd have to spend more than I would on a regular car. So, I just love this book. 5 stars. I recommend this a lot too. So, there you have number 6, Christine. Alright, we have cracked the top 5. So, at this point, I'm going to show you what the top 5 used to be up here. Check out that video if you have not done so. But that was back in September, so things have changed. So, coming in at number 5 is The Long Walk, which is a Richard Bachman book. This is my favorite Richard Bachman book, obviously, because it's in my top 10, Stephen King. So the story of this is 100 young men are doing a long walk. And so the idea is you pretty much, I think you get sent a slip, or I think you volunteer for this. I don't think you have to do this. And so you volunteer to do this long walk, and at the end, if you win, you get, the greatest prize of all, like whatever you want, whatever you desire. And so what happens is this boy named Garrity decides to join against, his mother's will. And so he ends up becoming friends with, I think, 7 to 10 of the walkers. And the way how the story goes is, if you got to walk at a certain X amount of pace, like I think it's 4 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour or something like that. You have to keep the same pace or faster, and if you slow down, then you get warnings. And after the third warning, you can get a third warning, and then if they have to do anything after that, something happens to you. Just know that there can only be one winner, so without saying anything more than that, you can kind of figure out what happens. Just know that they don't come back, so they don't just pull them out of the race. It's a little bit worse than that. So only one person can win, and the ending has got actually one of probably the better twists that I can think of. But it's a really cool story. It kind of, to me, it's kind of like Stand By Me, but way longer in terms of the amount of people that are actually friends in the book, and it gets darker with what happens to most of the people. So I don't know, I just like the friendship between everybody, and it just, it's actually a fast-paced book too. This is the first Stephen King book that I thoroughly read and enjoyed, and I read it freehand just with the book. I didn't even use audiobook or anything. So Long Walk, 5 stars, absolutely loved this book, and it's coming in at number 5. Alright, coming in at number 4 is the book that pushed The Long Walk and Christine out of the top 5, obviously, and that is The Green Mile. This book is phenomenal. There are some parts that take a little bit to get going and are slow, but overall this story is possibly one of the best stories I ever read. Obviously the other 3 are better, but The Green Mile is such a fantastic story. It's about Paul Edgecombe, who is this guard on the Green Mile, which is death row. And what happens is they get this prisoner in, this really giant black man who committed one of the worst crimes. He raped 2 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds or something like that, and then killed them. However, as the story progresses, you get introduced to other characters, and honestly, what's his name? John Coffey. How could I forget John Coffey? That's the guy's name. And John Coffey is revealed to have one of the best gifts ever. He has the power of healing. So what he can do is he heals. One day, Percy, which is one of the guards that you find out that you actually really hate, he's kind of a douche, steps on Edward Delacroix's mouse, Mr. Jangles, which is a prisoner who's already been in the prison for a little while, and, he starts playing with this mouse. Percy absolutely hates it. He steps on it, and that day, Percy walks away, and John, reaches out his hand, is like, give me the mouse. And he's like, there still might be time, and everyone's like, what? And so Paul because before that happened, Paul had already had his urinary tract infection fixed by John Coffey. And it's the power of the hand. So John, yanked Paul in, cupped his business down below, and cured it. So Paul already kind of knows, okay, he's got this power. Let me give him the mouse. Everyone else is like, what are you doing? So he gives him the mouse, sucks in the bad, and the mouse is healed. And it's a phenomenal story. I absolutely love it. And the ending, even with the movie, what I might actually end up doing is I might rank the movies that are part of my top 10. Maybe. And look out for that if that happens. But the ending is absolutely so sad because you have so much hope as a reader that something is going to happen, and you kind of feel so upset because there's nothing that can happen. This is back in the 50s or the 40s. It could have been the 30s, but there's nothing that they can do. And everyone on death row meets Old Sparky, which is the electric chair. So it's very sad. But Green Mile, 5 stars, coming in at number 4. All right, a lot of you know my top 3. Nothing has changed. So coming in at number 3 is Pet Sematary. This book is eerie, creepy, and it's fast-paced. It gets going. There's some really sad moments in this book. There are some happy moments in this book. This also has got one of my favorite characters of all time, Judd Crandall, the old man. He is absolutely phenomenal. I love him as a character. I love his accent, the way he talks. I know that could be just, the person reading the book, but just the way he talks, he interacts with the family, and it's really cool. So Lewis Creed is a doctor, and he just starts at this new university, move into this old house in the country, kinda in Maine. Everything's in Maine. And so what happens is one day their pet cat gets hit by a truck and dies, and the little girl, who is Lewis's daughter, is very upset about it, or she doesn't know about it actually. And so what happens is Judd Crandall is like, I know a place where we can bury the cat, and Lewis is like, okay, we'll bury him up at the old pet cemetery. And he's just like, no, we're going over there, we're going further. So they bury the cat in an old Indian burial ground. Cat comes back to life and makes it kind of it never died, because at the time his daughter was in Chicago with his wife, and they didn't want to tell them that the cat's dead. So what happened after that is Lewis gets introduced to this power, and what happens is this power just kind of it makes you have to go back to it. That's the way Judd describes it. Because Judd actually buried his dog up there when he was a kid, and it's sad. And what ensues is this story that is just it's very upsetting. It's a sad book at some parts, and I don't know. When I first read it, there was actually a part in the book where I thought it was different than the actual movie. The original one, the 2019 movie, sucks. I absolutely hate that movie. And so I thought something different was going to happen in the book, but then it gets flipped, and they're like, yeah, no, but that would have been what happened if I did make it. If you've read the book or if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But overall, Pet Sematary, 5 stars. If it wasn't for these other 2 books, it would be my #1 book of all time. Alright, coming in at number 2 is The Shining. So, y'all know this book. Everybody knows this book. This is a story about Jack Torrance, my favorite character of all time. My favorite fictional character of all time. And takes the job of a winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel in Colorado. And so what happens is he goes there. The son that he has, Danny Torrance, has got what is called the Shine, or the Shining. And so what happens is he can see what other people can't. He can talk to people. He can do things with his mind. And Jack and Wendy is the mother, kind of like, you know, don't really show that power, don't use it, and like kind of like hide it. And so what happens, Jack is a recovering alcoholic. He actually hurt Danny at some point in his childhood. And they go to the Overlook Hotel, and they also meet Dick Halloran, who is somebody who also has the Shining. And he kind of teaches Danny like the basics and like how to control it, what he can do. And, you know, he's like, you've got the most powerful shine that I've ever seen. Dick's grandmother, I think, was the one who also had it. And so they could have conversations without talking. Because they can, you know, communicate without moving their mouth. So the Overlook Hotel's got a really bad history, and what happens, Jack goes there, he gets swayed into drinking, being an alcoholic, even though all the alcohol has been taken from the premises, and it's just such a good story. The movie with Jack Nicholson in 1980, a lot of people hate it. I actually love it. This book got 5 stars. It was not even a question. And very solid book. So, there you have The Shining at number 2. Alright, coming in at number 1 is my all-time favorite book of all time. And that is It by Stephen King. So this follows The Losers Club, which has got Mike, Ben, Beverly, Bill, Richie, Stanley, and... did I say Eddie? Eddie, I think, is number 7. Ben, Bill, Beverly. There's 7 of them. And I'm not even going to say their last names because I'm barely remembering their first names. And so they form this group called the Losers Club. And what happens is there's a bunch of disappearances of children in the 50s. And I think it's every 27 years this creature comes back. And they call it It. And so in the 50s, this creature is pretty much snagging up children left and right. And what it does is it feeds off your fear. And it takes the form of your biggest fear. And the one that everybody knows is Pennywise the Dancing Clown. However, it does take different forms, like a leper, a horde of locusts, a wolf, like the Wolfman, Dracula. You know, it takes many different forms, but the one everybody is accustomed to is Pennywise the Dancing Clown, which, by the way, Tim Curry's version is better than Bill Skarsgård, in my opinion. But that's a different thing to discuss. So it's just it's a very nice story. It tells, you know, it's got a good bondage of friendship between, you know, all the friends and everyone that's in this book. The adults can't see it. So it's pretty much just the kids battling this evil demon by themselves. And that's what makes it a little bit more, like, annoying for them. It's like none of the adults see it. Like, there's a scene where blood explodes out of Beverly's bathroom, and the dad's just like, what's going on? You good? Like, why are you sitting on the floor? You all right? And she's just like, do you not see the blood? And so none of the adults see what the kids see, and then they jump forward in time. So this is kind of told in 2 different parts. There's the parts where they're kids and they first experience it, and then they get a phone call from Mike Hamlin, who stayed in Derry, to make sure that it was destroyed the first time they battled him, and he's not. And then the second part is they come back as adults to fight it and kill it finally. And so it's a very nice story. I absolutely love it. My favorite Stephen King book of all time. Number 1. It. Alright, and there you have my April updated 2021 top 10 Stephen King books of all time. Obviously, there are more books I have to read. The ones I have left, I'm not sure what is going to crack the top 10. I still have got 11/22/63, Under the Dome. I've got a bunch I still need to read that other people have in their top 5, top 10. But right now, this is where I'm sitting at, my top 10. I love this list. There is a couple that I would have liked to have mentioned, Misery, Cujo, a couple other things like that, but they just didn't make the cut. And so, yes, I am saying that Dreamcatcher is better than Misery. At me. And so, this was a really fun list to make. Obviously, it's really tough for me to make except for the top 3, but don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more stuff like this, and we will see you guys in the next video. Later.